Over the last 2 years or so, SpaceX has recorded blazing success with its booster landers. The last 1 year in particular has seen SpaceX launch several of these boosters, and they've landed without any problems. However, that winning streak came to an end recently when SpaceX lost a rocket in the ocean. In today's video, we'll be checking out what the rocket was delivering, how it got lost at sea, and most importantly, why it got lost. Welcome to Super Freaky Science. When did the loss happen? The booster got missing during the company's February 15th launch of 60 Starlink internet satellites. The booster, named B1059, was making its 6th flight to the sky and thankfully delivered its payload to orbit. However, the booster couldn't touch down on the drone ship, Of Course, I Still Love You, which has been deployed to the Atlantic in anticipation of the booster touching down. Now, how big a loss is this? According to SpaceX, it isn't that big of a loss. In fact, according to the company, the booster's first job is to deliver payloads to the sky. Recovering the booster itself is a bonus and not a main objective of the mission. So, no, losing a rocket wasn't that much of a blow to SpaceX. But why did the booster miss its landing? What happened? Well, the short answer is hot air. But you aren't watching this video for the short answer, are you? You want the whole host. Why did the booster get missing? On March 1st, there was a NASA news conference that was held concerning the upcoming Crew 2 mission, set to launch on April 22nd. At the meeting, Benji Reed, the Senior Director for Human Spaceflight at SpaceX, explained why the booster couldn't land. The answer was pretty simple. The engine shutdown during the February launch happened because hot gas sped up through a worn-out engine cover. These covers are called boots, and they are installed around certain parts of each Merlin 1D engine that powers the Falcon 9. What happened during the return flight of the booster is that one of these boots had a hole in it. This hole made the air from the engine seep up into other parts of the rocket. It was that hot air that got into somewhere it wasn't supposed to and made the rocket fail. Interestingly, Reed insinuated that the engine didn't shut down on the way down. Instead, it happened during ascent. So why didn't it crash? The answer is simple. The Falcon 9 has the engine out capability. That means that the rocket can deliver payloads to space even if it loses one of its engines during the flight. If Falcon 9 had not had that, the entire thing would have come crashing down. The main reason that the booster missed the targeted landing on the drone ship was that the engine of the booster had already shut down and it couldn't navigate to where it was supposed to land. According to Reed, the reason why the booster wasn't able to land was that it lost too much thrust with the loss of that engine. And with that thrust gone, the booster couldn't land on where it needed to land. What does this mean for SpaceX? Well, the first thing that this means for SpaceX is that it stops a landing streak of 24 consecutive booster recoveries. This landing streak followed the back-to-back losses of 2 boosters in February and March of 2020. These back-to-back losses were triggered by early engine shutdowns with unknown causes and by higher than predicted wind shear. Reed said that SpaceX already knows a lot about the reusability of rockets, but there is still a lot for the company to learn. For example, it didn't yet know what parts of the booster systems were actually more susceptible to wear and tear, thus couldn't preemptively replace them to avoid shutdowns during flight. Now, this particular booster was on its 6th flight when it landed in the ocean. This may sound like a big deal to you, but it's certainly not one to SpaceX, as the company has 2 other boosters that have gone on 8 flights each. However, Reed also remarked that the lost booster was carrying a different boot design, and the 6th flight was the highest number of flights the boot had ever seen. Now, for our wager. We'll tell you a super freaky science fact right now. If you've not heard it before, you'll have to smash the like and subscribe buttons. If you have, well, you still have to do it anyway. Deal? Deal. Hawaii moves 7.5 centimeters closer to Alaska every year. That's freaky, isn't it? Let's move on. What next? Well, SpaceX is not losing any sleep over this lost booster, and you probably shouldn't either. Since the booster got lost in the Atlantic, the Falcon 9 has gone on to make 3 successful landings. The first was the company's 77th recovery to date, which was a March 4 Starlink launch, and the second was an additional touchdown on another Starlink mission a week later. The third was on March 7th. All 3 flights used boosters that had 5 or more flights under their belts. The last flight even set a new record as it used the first booster in history to fly 8 times. To make things even more extraordinary, SpaceX has plans to fly the booster for the 10th time shortly. As the company's policy, SpaceX saves its boosters that have undergone more than 3 flights for its internal launches, like the ones with Starlink. Reid said that this practice would continue until SpaceX completely understands how boosters react after a certain number of flights. Once that piece of the puzzle is known, the company will start using veteran boosters for external launches. That point may be closer than everyone thinks, as NASA and Space Force recently gave SpaceX the green light to use previously flown boosters on missions. That is probably why the next Crew 2 mission will be the first to fly a reused Falcon 9 rocket and a reused Crew Dragon spacecraft. But the general feeling with NASA, SpaceX, the Space Force and the astronauts flying the rocket is that the loss of the booster is nothing to be worried about. They have simply chalked it up to the law of big numbers. If SpaceX is going to be launching multiple rockets per month, something is bound to go wrong with one of them. Let's hope they're right. That's it on today's video, guys. Goodbye, and remember to stay super. You better leave the freaky part to us.